Hello from Bali. This is a podcast Pigeon of Peace where we do discuss awesome skills of troubleshooters. Watch, listen, and check the description below for the details. Let's talk about phrenology and let's start with the definition.
It's very strange, a kind of science or maybe quasi-science or parascience. It was formed by Joseph Gall. He, when was studying in the school, he noticed that people who get good marks have special, I don't know how to say, выпуклости на черепе.
Well, probably like areas, like embossed or debossed areas. Or
embossed or debossed areas on the skull, and then he decided that maybe those forms on the skull is connected with human abilities to think, and he created such a theory, and this theory was very famous. By the way, if you will see the movie with DiCaprio, name like Django Frieden, I don't know how to say, Django освобожденный.
Django and Freed probably.
Django Freed, you will notice such a scene. Suddenly, DiCaprio or his hero would take a skull and he would tell a story that his was his very old servant. He was working even with his father and his grandfather, and he would like to memorize him by taking his scalp out and take this skin out of the bone, and then he suddenly takes something like saw. Is it okay to say saw? Pila.
Yeah, it's a saw.
Like a saw, and also hammer, and he broke and somehow cutted the skull and was showing to everyone that there are some areas on the skull which explain why people with black skin, they quite similar to animals, and they couldn't stand the same layer or same level as white people. And this theory was very famous during slavery because with this theory it were quite easier to explain why we use those people and feed them and treat them like animals. They live in barns, they live in, I don't know how to say, солома сена, dry grass,
straw. Straw.
Thank you. They just sleeping on the straw, and they were punished in very severe mode, like horses, like cows.
And when actually, someone probably could create this science to justify some of the stuff, they definitely still, like, even if we speak about scientific world, they definitely would look some sort of like a hypothesis or maybe a little proof or maybe a little assumptions in order to at least to make sure that, like it matches their point. So what exactly kind of arguments or maybe, like historical references or maybe like a data set, so-called data sets, was used in order to prove or convince the society that this actually could make sense? And I put it in the bracket, makes sense.
Yes, okay. Let's talk about how we eat animals. Maybe you also, as me, like steak, or maybe you like to eat roast beef or roast chicken. And when you eat it, you want to be free without any doubts. And you will be happy to know any arguments that people, for example, doesn't feel pain. I read Chinese research several weeks ago, and suddenly I was even happy to read it. It was about that some mussels and lobsters and shrimps and other creatures which live on the seashell, they feel pain while we try to make cooking. You right now on the Bali island, and maybe you have been to Jimbaran or some other areas, and where you could catch or ask to prepare food from the live creatures, and cooks will boil oil, and then they will put a live animal in this very hot substance, and for sure there are no cries because we couldn't hear it, but for a very long time it was a meaning that those creatures do not feel any pain. But now Chinese scientists, they found no, it's extremely painful and it should be prohibited to cook those creatures in this way. But for sure it's the only way to show that you have you have been eating very fresh stuff, because you will see how it moves by itself before it will be boiled. The same, for example, with slavery or some other stuff. If you own, for example, several people who work for you and you don't want to pay them and you don't treat them well, then you need any explanation that will cover your doubts about if it is lawful or not. So it was a very helpful theory for people who have servants.
Well, I do believe, yes, it's might be quite convenient in order to, justify certain stuff. And maybe, like even it turns out that the animals, or, like the predators, is actually quite kind comparing to the human. But when we speak about like different aspects, because it sounds like it has like a logic kind of a thing, that means, like it studies kind of a thing. That means it probably could be the opposite side. Maybe it could justify, like intelligence, cognition, or anything like this. So how this theory covers that area?
Yes, it would be great if it will work or would work in opposite way. But sadly, it doesn't. If you will cover or open the head of the human, that human, and we will take out our brain, we will find that surface of the brain doesn't match to our skull. So nothing in common. And the reason is because everything in our body and everything in the nature is going to be as smooth as it possible. So everything is going to have a very sophisticated and smooth curves. And if you have some skulls, some special areas on skulls, it will not reflect to your brain. So it is completely disconnected substance. So there would be no connections. This is first. Second, okay, let's think maybe we could make it in another way, but let's go deeper and I don't know how to say to source, к источникам.
To the source, to the roots.
To the roots, yes. Let's go to the roots. Why phrenology was so successful? Because before this theory was another theory, physiognomics. For example, if you will see on the face, you will understand, for example, is it possible to this person to be a crimer, преступник?
Criminal.
Criminal, thank you, criminal. But this theory also was broken, and it doesn't prove anything, and it was like also a mistake. But it was a good guess. When I was working on the credit conveyor in Alpha Bank, I have a lot of power, and I was conducted several experiments, and I put on the photos of our applicants some dots. For example, distance between eyes, and levels between eyes and nose and lips and let me remember how it...
Chin.
cheek,
And
chin, then chin and eye and everything else. So I put 11 dots on the face, and I was eager to prove maybe physiognomy maybe will work in like in big data, but it will not. Sometimes it show that a person could not give credit, but sometimes quite well credit person applicants were marked as bad. So after 2 years of experiment, I refused this theory as doesn't working. So non-phrenology, neither physiognomics were working in my experiments.
And maybe you actually will take a little step back because what I kind of I'm doing a bit of like a Python code, etc. It helps to understand like how certain constructions have been built, etc., etc. So during the study, you understand things when you see as they are. And when we look at the phrenology, I do believe part of this might be called as the overtone window, meaning that like at a certain point of time, people say, hey, like if you have this color of skin or eyes or like voice, you might be belonging to certain like group of people. Does it mean that we as a human actually need to understand the source, like we understand the source code, we understand what moves us in order to not to make false decision? Because it obviously was, like I do believe over the centuries of science, like there were a lot of people who actually could prove this point wrong, like in matter of, like a couple of minutes, yet humanity maybe because of the historical or social or any other aspects, was really easily convinced. So like, what kind of lesson I would say we should learn from this kind of a thing? Should we always take everything critical, or if needed, yes, we will be flexible, we adjust, but still we have our moral compass?
I will tell you a story. I was head of security, of economical security of Alpha Bank Ukraine, and I was responsible also for cashiers. It's okay to say cashiers, кассиры.
Yeah, cashier.
Cashiers, yes. And among them, there were one mother and one daughter. They were looking not healthy. They were having very big eyeballs out of orbits. And it was very strange and even painful to see. And at some day, I saw that everyone on the shift was quite nice girls and women. And I asked the chef of cashiers, could we fire them out? And yes, with cries, she did it. And after several weeks, I noticed that we have too many forgeries, too many fake bills of euros and dollars. It was like 20 years ago. And I summoned cashiers and asked, what are we doing wrong? I gave you quite good counting machines. They have ability to detect fraud. Why we have so many fraud bills? Something wrong with maybe elimination or with I don't know, conditioning. You have maybe not good conditions of your work. What we should improve to avoid these mistakes? Suddenly, this was an answer. You already fired two best cashiers. They have a feeling on the fingers because they have special disease. I couldn't remember the name of this disease, but this make them very attentive to the details. And I ask, okay, I'm very sorry, we could give them some prizes and we'll give them some compensation. Could we bring them back? And yes, we have them back, and amount of fraud bills were quite reduced. But after several weeks of this small success, I asked head of cashiers, is it possible to find another girls and women with the same defect with eyeballs? And she said, yes, it's possible. And we hired another 3 girl and 1 woman with same defect, but they has no such ability. So even in this case, something went wrong.
Well, and then my last question will be how knowing about phrenology could help to make this world a better place.
We have already been talking about DiCaprio and this film Django Freed, and maybe some people will, for the very first time, listen in this movie about this ability of our skull to suggest our human abilities. And not too many people know that this is fake. So you should know about this theory to not to be involved in discussion about this on the side of the evil.
And we review the skill of phrenology and how it could be helpful for you. Stay in peace.